after all. You can block it by entering sudo ufw deny SSH. Now if I try and connect remotely from the Windows machine, you can see that after a short while the connection times out. With the firewall operational, you need to stop and think about all of your connections to the server, even on your local network. For example, if you set up a network share using Samba, you'll also want to allow access to that. You can see at the moment that it's currently blocked. So back on the server we need to enter sudo ufw allow Samba. And if I try again on the Windows computer, we're now allowed back in. If you decide configuring firewall rules isn't for you and you'd rather turn the firewall back off, you can do that by typing sudo ufw disable. The whole point of a server is to serve services over a network, so it can be very useful to get to know the netstack command, as this displays information about network connections. To get the most out of it, we need to run it as admin by using sudo, and to get even more out of it, we can add some command line options. A popular set of options is TU-LPN, as each of these will show us a different set of data as shown on screen. Before we can run this command, we first need to install it. So type in sudo apt install net-tools to do so. And now let's run the netstack command. Each line represents a different network connection. On the left is the type of network protocol, either TCP or UDP. We have the local address and, more importantly, the port number. Whether the connection is listening, in other words services that are running waiting to be contacted, and the program name or the process that's creating that particular service. To try and make a little more sense of what's going on here, let's take this line as an example. We can see this is showing us the SMBD or Samba service. It's using the TCP protocol and operating on port 445. It's also in a listening state and so is ready to be connected to. By using the netstack command, we can see at a glance what services the server is making available to the network. Although that was a pretty whistle-stop tour, hopefully the output of the netstack command no longer looks like a list of meaningless text. Another important area when monitoring a server is resources. There are a couple of popular commands we can make use of here. Historically, there's top. This shows us the processes running on the server. It's useful to be able to see what's using up the server's resources, particularly in situations where you may not have very powerful hardware. Processes using the most resources are listed at the top. Let's press Q to quit out of there. A more useful and newer alternative is HTOP, though even this has been around since 2004. You can think of HTOP as being like top on steroids. Perhaps most usefully, it's also interactive, so as well as being able to monitor the system's resources, by using the commands listed along the bottom of the screen, we can analyse the information more closely. Let's say I wanted to search for processes connected with Samba. If I press the F3 key and enter SMB, it will highlight a running process that meets this criteria. Pressing F3 again will find the next process running SMB, and we can cycle through them using the F3 key. Looking more closely at a particular process, you can see that it shows the PID or process identifier. This is the number assigned to it. We can also see the user that the process is running as, in this case root. The CPU and memory columns are especially important, as these reveal the percentage of the server's processor and RAM respectively that the process is currently consuming, and the command column displays the location of the command that invoked the process. Here it's /user/sbin/smbd. We can press the escape key to cancel out of search. Another useful option is F9 kill. If a process has gone awry and is gobbling up far too much of your server's precious resources, you can force it to close. Let's say HTOP itself went out of control. Being at the top of the list, it is currently using the most resources, but that's just because I'm not currently asking the server to do anything else. Still, let's pretend the process has gone rogue and we need to kill it. With the process highlighted, we need to press the F9 key. This brings up the send signal command. By default it will use sig_term. This is the polite way of asking the process to close. But if the process was particularly stubborn, you could opt for something more drastic like sig_kill. So let's press enter to politely kill htop. And you can see that we now have the command prompt back at the bottom of the screen. Of course, if we run htop again, the better way to exit the program is to use the F10 key. A couple of tips before we wrap up this video. If you're typing a command, particularly one where you're navigating directories, you can make your life easier by using something called tab completion. As an example, let's say I want to get to the root directory of the Apache web server. If I start typing cd/var/, but then instead of typing the full directory name www, I type W and then press the tab key, notice how it automatically fills in the rest of the folder name. And then if I do the same thing again, this time instead of typing HTML, I just type H and press the tab key. Once more it auto-completes the entry. Obviously this can save you quite a bit of typing, particularly where longer paths are involved. The final thing I'd like to mention is the man or manual command. If you get stuck and aren't sure what a command does in the terminal, you can take a look at its manual. Hopefully by now you know the purpose of the sudo command. But if you weren't sure, you could type man sudo, and this gives you lots of information about the particular command, including any available options. When you've finished looking it up, you can press Q to exit out of there. And that's it. I'm now going to shut down my server. But you'll probably want to leave yours running. And that brings us to the end of this video. This one has been a little more technical than usual. Hopefully there hasn't been too much snoring going on in the back row. Running a server isn't for everyone, but for those who like to take a closer look at the nuts and bolts of the system and gain a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes, manually setting up a server is a great learning experience. And with 5 years of updates for the LTS version, Ubuntu server is a great place to start. There's a whole world of servers out there. Maybe now there'll be one more as you start administering your own. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified when I post the next one, just click the bell icon. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.
for Beginners, Lesson 1. Today we're going to talk about variables. You're going to learn about what they are, how to declare them in Swift code, and furthermore, how to use them. Alright, so let's get started. For the rest of the lessons in this series, we're going to be working inside this app called Xcode. Xcode is the tool that Apple has provided for people to build apps with. And inside Xcode, you're going to be able to create your user interfaces. You're going to be able to write the code. Hello, welcome to Learn Swift Programming for Beginners, Lesson 1. Today we're going to talk about variables. You're going to learn about what they are, how to declare them in Swift code, and furthermore, how to use them. Alright, so let's get started. For the rest of the lessons in this series, we're going to be working inside this app called Xcode. Xcode is the tool that Apple has provided for people to build apps with. And inside Xcode, you're going to be able to create your user interfaces. You're going to be able to write the code to express the logic in your app. You're going to be able to test your app even. So that's why this is where we're going to start in learning Swift. We're going to be writing the Swift code inside the app that you're actually going to use to build apps with in the future. So this is where you're going to get Xcode. Just go to your browser, go to developer.apple.com/Xcode, or you can launch the Mac App Store on your computer and search for Xcode there. If you're on the web page, you can see that there's this big blue download button up top. Now, ideally, you want to make sure you're using the latest version of Xcode, and right now, as of this recording, it's 8. And you can check your version if you go to Xcode. You can see it here in the welcome screen, and you can also go up here to Xcode, about Xcode, and you can see what the version is. If you're a PC user and you're running Windows, there may be some additional work you need to do before you can run Xcode, or you might have to use an alternative solution to build iOS apps. So check in the description below for PC solutions. However, if you are a PC user, don't let that discourage you. For me personally, I lost about 2 to 3 years of learning iOS development simply because I didn't have a Mac and I didn't want to get a Mac. But these days there are alternative solutions. You don't actually have to buy a Mac computer, although I eventually did, and now I haven't looked back. So anyways, now that you have Xcode and after you've installed it, it's a pretty large install, it's a pretty big program. So it might take some time, but after you have it installed and you launch it, you're going to see this welcome screen. You can see here that when you want to create an app for iPhone, iPad, Mac, or whatever, you're going to go to create a new Xcode project, and that's going to start a full-out project for you to build an app in. But here we're going to start a new playground because that's going to allow us to type some code quickly. It's going to let us run that code and see the results, and we're not committing to building a project. It's simply like a sandbox or a playground, as it's named. Now, if you don't see this welcome screen, what you can do is just go up to File, New, and hit Playground right there, and that's going to start a new playground for you as well. Or you can just hit this button, Get Started with the Playground. So that's going to launch this dialog for you, and I'm simply going to leave the default name there. Platform should be iOS, and I'm going to save this on my desktop. Okay, so after your playground runs, you'll see up here it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. Launching simulator, getting it ready, and when it's done all that, it's going to say ready. You can already start typing in code, so there you go, it says ready. But when it doesn't say ready and it's doing something, then chances are whatever you're typing here is not going to show up on the right hand side. Okay, we're going to start with a quick tour of this playground window here. So down on the left hand side, I have a bunch of line numbers. Now, if you don't
Do you want to learn embedded system and IoT and design your own microcontroller board? Something like this?
You can go to Xcode Preferences, and you can go to Text Editing, and you can simply enter line numbers. Now this area right here is where Swift code. And I've got a bunch of stuff right here, which we're going to go through in a second. On the right hand side, you're going to see a quick preview of the results of what you typed. Now, a lot of people have trouble getting up to the on the right hand side based on what they do. Well, one of the things that you can check is the status or for a brief second there, there was a little spinning evaluating the code here. If you want to go up you may not notice because it's hidden at first, you can hit this button to show the debug area, or there's also this little button here to hide the different panels. Okay, but we don't need to see all of that. But this debug panel may be useful when we start to output things. Here, this is called the console area, where we can use Swift commands to output things. This blue icon here is to execute the code in your playground. So if you can't get things to show up on the right here, try clicking this button to run your playground. Right now it's blue because down there, the drop down arrow there, because it's hidden at first. Hold it, you can hit this button whether you want to switch it to automatically run, or there's also that's going to run the playground whenever you type something, hide the different or you can set it to manually run. You can see now we don't need to see all of that. If I type in some this code, debug panel to maybe useful or display when I start to output things. Here, this is called the console area. So I would recommend just have Swift commands to output things. So now that you know the main areas of the playground is to execute the code in your playground. So if you can't get things to show up on the right here, try clicking this button to run your playground. Variable. Right now it's blue. Now this data because down there, the drop down arrow is object or if you hold it, you can hit this button. Whether you want to switch it to automatically run, or you're going to run this little button. Now it's hide this or you can set it to manually run. Very cool. So if I think it says this code, debug panel to maybe use change or when we start to output things. Here, this is called the console. So I would recommend just have Swift commands to output things. So now this blue area is to execute the code in your playground. So if you can't get things to show up on the right here, try clicking this button to run your Swift playground. So right now it's blue. This data because down on the right hand side of the arrow, this means that you can say that variable and see this button. Now it's like hide this for example. It's very good to see this to function to really use that. So when you start to output things here, that's called this console. So I recommend say something else. So this area that is to execute the code in your console. So you can get things to show up on the right here. Try clicking this button to run your Swift that right now it's low because on the right hand side there on the right hand side this and there's a slot next there and
సరిపోవట్లేదు
వాడు సెట్ చేసుకొని
బయట అలాగా నాకు స్టీమ్ అవ్వట్లేదు అలాగే
స్టీమ్ అవ్వట్లేదా
సరిగ్గా అవ్వట్లేదు
ఏమో స్లో అయిపోయింది స్టార్ట్ కానీ స్టాప్ చేయనా స్ట్రీమ్ అవుట్పుట్ చూడు ఆడియో రేట్ వైబ్రేట్ స్ట్రీమింగ్ అవుట్పుట్ ఆటో వీడియో ఎక్కడ ఉండాలన్న బ్యాండ్ చూశాను స్ట్రీమ్లో ఉంటుంది బిట్ రేట్ ఉంది కదా ఇది 4000 దాకా ఇస్తే నెట్ ఫాస్ట్ ఉంటే కలిగిపోతుంది
ట్రై
లైవ్ లేదా
లైవ్లో ఉంటాయి లైవ్ పెట్టాను
యూట్యూబ్లోనే ఉంది కదా
చెప్పాను జూమ్ అవ్వట్లేదు పిక్చర్ రావట్లేదు బ్లాక్ స్క్రీన్ వచ్చేస్తుంది
రెండు సైమల్టేనియస్గా రెండు కూడా సైమల్టేనియస్గా చూడు ఇక్కడ అక్కడ బిట్ రేట్ ఉంది కదా 4000 దాకా ఇస్తే నెట్ ఫాస్ట్ ఉంటే
సమ్ డిలే ఉంటుంది కదా
ఎంతసేపు ఉంటుంది
5 సెకండ్స్ ఎంత ఉంటాయి
ఇప్పుడు నేను రిసెప్షన్ దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి వస్తాను కిచెన్ పెట్టావా
ఇంకా అమ్మాయి కలుపుకునేది
ఇప్పుడు ఇందులో వచ్చాడు
అమ్మాయి అబ్బాయి
లైవ్ లేదా మా అబ్బాయికి మరి ఏంటి లైవ్ వచ్చి ఫస్ట్
సాయి లేడు
ఎప్పుడు తప్ప
C, which is a float into an int. And what's going to happen is that it just drops the decimal portion of that. So if you did
యూట్యూబ్లో
print,
గణేష్ ఇది
అది కూడా రావట్లేదు
let's convert D, which is a double, into an integer. You can see here that it just chopped off the 0.9 and you get 13. Now there is a rounding function which we can try out right now. That, and then inside the parentheses you can put which is our double, which is C, which is the float, and what's going to happen is that the result is also a decimal number. See, it has a 0.0 there. So what you can do is wrap the result of that rounding inside a pair of brackets like this, inside an int. And then you'll get 14 without the decimal. Okay, so that does it for data types. Hello, welcome to Learn Swift for Beginners, Lesson 3. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to express some simple decision making in your Swift code using if statements. Alright, let's get started.
3308
So for this one, we're going to start a playground.
3308
Alright, so we've done this before. Let's just call this one the if playground, and I'm going to store this on my desktop. Okay, so we're talking about if statements today. And this is really exciting because it lets us finally start to make decisions through code and express some sort of logic. So for example, if I have, let's declare a constant here. So let a equals 10, for example. And I wanted to print this statement only if a is less than, let's say 11, which it is right here. But, okay, actually, that is
capital YD.
let's say 4. And this gives us a reason to use the if statement, right? Okay, so print only if a is less than 4, but a is 10, right? So we shouldn't be outputting this. So what we can use here is an if statement, and what it allows us to do is only execute some code if a certain condition is true. So in this case, we want to print this only if A is less than 4. So we can write an if statement to check if that's true or not before we print that statement. So let me show you what that syntax looks like. And if you're not familiar with programming terms, syntax is simply like the grammatical structure of the language.
What is the
So
status?
it basically keywords to use, and let's convert how we go about declaring an if statement or writing an if statement. So it all starts with the if keyword. Following the if keyword, we have the condition in which we want to check. And following the condition, we have a set of curly brackets. Now inside the curly brackets, that's where we put the code that we want to run if that condition is true. So that's your very basic if statement. Now going back to our playground, let's write it out and print this if A is less than 4. So we can do something like that. If A, and then we can use this operator less than 4. And remember, we need to surround the piece of code that we want to execute if the condition is true, using a pair of curly brackets like that. So you can put the curly bracket on the same line, or you can put it on a second line, it doesn't matter. But what you usually want to do is indent the code that is inside it, just so it's easier to read. I usually like to put this curly bracket in the same line like that. Which is a double into an integer. Okay, so now you can see that in the console there's just printed and also to right here. Now there is a rounding function which we can try out right here. Is false. A is that on the side 4. This is easy to put. Which is our double, which is
Hello.
C, which is and what's going to happen is that the results, so that's your very basic C0 there. So what you can do is wrap the result of that rounding inside there is an else brackets clause. So for example, using the else if, and then you'll get 14 with that condition if the first condition evaluates to false. Okay, so that does it for data types. Hello, welcome to Learn Swift for Beginners Lesson 3. That looks like this. So you have your simple decision if statements. Alright, let's get started. Condition, and then you have your curly brackets, and then you use the keywords. So for this one, we're going to start a playground. I'll call this one, and then you check another condition, and you have another set of curly brackets. So if you write it this way, you're basically checking condition number 1, and you know, is that true? Is false? And now you're checking condition 2. Okay, and so that actually evaluates the true instead of running the code. And this is really exciting because it lets us finally start to now keep in mind decisions through code and kind of goes from top some sort of logic. And if the first condition is actually true, then it's going to run that piece of code in here inside the first set of curly brackets, and it's just going to ignore your else if, for example. And I wanted to take a look at that this statement playground. So here, only if else A is less than, let's say 11, which it is right here. And now print. Okay, now if A is less than 18. So now I'm going to change. And this gives us a reason to use the if statement, right? And here, okay, so you can see print only if A is less than 4, but this condition, so we shouldn't be putting this. Then it's so what we can use here is an if statement, and what it allows us to do is only execute some code. Now what if I give a certain condition is true to 7? So in this case, we want to print that only if A is less than 4 statement. Because so we can write in check this to check if that's true or not before we print that statement. So let me show you what that syntax looks like. And if you're not familiar with programming for A is 1, it's simply like the grammatical structure of the language. So 1, and then It's key for how we go about declaring and ifs now I say all of these other. So it all starts with the if keyword. Because you can have following the if keyword, we have the condition in which we want to check. In following the condition, and then you can have a set of adding as many conditions as you want. Now keep in mind that the curly brackets, that's where we put the code that we want to run if that condition is